I am gaming. I am gaming. I am gaming podcast.
Hey everybody, my name is Ivica. Thank you so much for being on the latest episode of I Am Gaming Podcast, a podcast about the video game industry, entrepreneurship, gaming nostalgia, and many more cool things I find to be in the same realm of creative and business ventures. Like always, a huge thanks to my Patreon supporters. They make this podcast possible. Check out the link in the description below, more precisely the links in the description below that will take you to their ventures. They make cool games, cool content, and many other things that you should check out right now. So a big thanks to each and every one of you, dear patrons. You make this podcast possible. If you'd like to check out my Patreon page, please do so. Also on the link in the description below, or learn how to improve your productivity with my Amazon best-selling short book. It was a bestseller in June 2020. Hey, it's not much, but it's a bestseller, and it can show you how you can stop procrastinating. Now, this is episode 62. After all of those things I had to pitch right at the very beginning and most likely turn off many of you from listening further, I would like to talk to you about this episode, which has a very precise topic, and it's Russell Crowe. More precisely, how you can learn from Russell Crowe how not to deal with criticism, because the man had a pretty ingenious episode recently on Twitter. It's not a big deal, it's a minor thing. No one cares, probably in the long run, but it's still super funny, weird, and useful to everyone who has some kind of a, I'm guessing, artistic, creative, or any kind of other venture that actually places your work in the public domain and opens it up to criticism. No one likes criticism, it's hard. Usually people say that they enjoy constructive criticism and they don't like trolling and stuff like that, which is kind of common sense. Nobody likes trolling and everyone likes, in theory, constructive criticism, but in reality we don't like anyone to criticize negatively our work. We just want to be adored and loved universally. Now that's a pretty hard thing to get unless you're, I don't know, Cormac McCarthy. But if you're not and you're listening to this, you'll probably get a lot of negative feedback. Now in the case of Russell Crowe, everything started with a movie. That movie is Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. And online movie critic called Ian McNabb tweeted out this tweet. A lot of folks complaining about lack of sleep during the pandemic. May I recommend Master and Commander, starring the usually captivating, attention-grabbing Russell Crowe. I never made it past the 10-minute mark. You're welcome and thanks, Russell. And he made a huge error of using Russell Crowe Twitter handle, which is why Russell Crowe saw this and decided in his really cool fashion, this oratory genius, to respond to this criticism by saying this. And I'm quoting here. That's the problem with kids these days. No focus. Peter Weir's film is brilliant. An exacting, detail-oriented epic tale of fidelity to empire and service regardless of the cost. Incredible cinematography by Russell Boyd and a majestic soundtrack. Definitely an adult's movie. Now, first of all, the movie critic in question is 4 years older than Russell Crowe, so right at the get-go, he completely misses the mark and goes for the ye old kids these days don't have a clue and they're not super cool, unlike me, the rage-filled Russell Crowe. And that's his first mistake. But the second mistake he makes is to go into the qualities of this movie that should make it entertaining. And that's the whole point that the same movie critic Ian made. He never said that movie is bad, Master and Commander. He just said it's boring. And that's a personal, emotional take about a work of art. Now the problem here is most likely that Russell Crowe doesn't get this. He simply doesn't get that somebody can dislike something that's good, or like something that is, in terms of general art criticism and general art theory, bad or not that good. So you can't actually contradict an emotion with facts, which can be interpreted as quality in this case. But even they are not facts, they're just his opinion. And he's replying to a feeling with a set of stupid facts, which isn't shining the best light on Russell Crowe, like the media in the last 30 years. Even though he's a great actor, he has a lot of problems, especially when it comes to emotions, clearly. And he provides a perfect reason why you don't respond like this to criticism, especially when it's a criticism of art. And in this case, it's not even a criticism. The guy simply wanted to make a joke, and Russell Crowe didn't get it. And the thing that he got was wrong and simply not factually correct. He isn't responding in an appropriate manner, aside from trying to be somebody who's savvy in the domain of movies, but he didn't sound like that. He just sounded bitter and like a crybaby. That's a huge lesson right there. The criticism you face isn't directed at you, in the sense that the other person has no clue who you are. Your friends, your relatives know who you are. Everyone else does not know you. Even if you're a public figure, they have no clue who you really are. Even if you're a streamer who showcases his, hers, or whatever life for 24 hours per day, people who consume your work are not your friends. They don't get you, they don't know you. Even if it sounds like that they might do, they don't. That's not that kind of a relationship. And responding to it in this manner is absurd. It's absurd even to respond like this to your friends, but in that case you have that emotional back and forth connection where you might get irritated and you want to kind of push back. It's equally pointless, but at least it's explainable in an emotional setting. Here it's not. These are not truly relationships. They are simply mimics or shadows of relationships where someone can push your button, but only if you allow them to. That's the key point here. You will face criticism all of the time from everyone. A lot of it will try to be personal. You need to understand that it's not simply that because the other person does not know you. They can maybe by accident push some buttons harder than some others, but you need to be aware of it, and you need to understand they're strangers, complete strangers. You might have some kind of relationship with some of them, but usually they are absolute and complete strangers. And these people will keep on coming. And I'm not even talking about people who are dedicated trolls. I'm talking about everyone who is not your close circle of friends, acquaintances, and everyone else who is maybe 200, 300 people tops. Everyone else is a stranger. Complete and total stranger. You need to understand this. You might see Russell Crowe for 30 years on TV, watch him on movies, in cinemas, on your TV sets. It doesn't matter. You have no clue who Russell Crowe is. His friends, his relatives, his acquaintances do know him. And that applies to everyone on the other side of the equation as well. In this case, if you have creative ventures, if you're putting them out there, you need to understand that this kind of response to your work will keep on coming. If you get invested emotionally every time, actually invested, like you're discussing things with your friends, you're going to burn out. You're free to respond whatever you want, whatever you like, but the point is that you need to understand that the emotional impulses that come from you, like this, in this case, the emotional impulse of anger, which comes from Russell Crowe, should not be manifested into pseudo facts like he did here. He's clearly mad. Don't do that. Don't get invested emotionally, because that type of content will keep coming at you. Sometimes in huge quantities if you have something that's really successful, at other times in smaller amounts, but it will keep coming. And I'm not saying ignore the trolls. This is not even a story about trolling. This is a story about understanding your emotions and being aware of them enough to say, okay, I'm not going to type down a detailed, complex response to that person because I know that there's nothing for me to be gained there. Apart from me venting my negative emotions, yes, this comment made me mad. This comment made me irritated. But that is not my real life. That person is an unknown individual. And that is why I would allow this emotion to pass through me. It's okay to feel it. It's okay to be saturated with it. But I'm not going to get into a strong embrace with it and then allow it to eat up my day, make me frustrated, make me even madder, make me even angrier, and pull me into a spiral of negative emotions, further negative emotions that I don't have to get into. That's the key point. It doesn't matter. You're making a YouTube video, you're making games, you're writing short stories, you're publishing books. This applies to all of those things. Be prepared for criticism in all shapes and forms, but understand that it's coming from strangers. Otherwise, you get to the point where Russell Crowe is, where you're mad, you're saying what's wrong with the kids today, which is stupid in any circumstance, and get into a whole lot of trouble for a different reason that's completely irrelevant to Russell Crowe. He doesn't care. He's not going to lose your job because of this, or probably a lot of sleep, but you shouldn't lose even 5 minutes of your day in your case. So that's all. Hopefully this episode made sense to you. Hopefully you learned from Russell Crowe's, I'd say for certain, mistake, and you won't have to repeat it yourself. And that's it for everything I wanted to talk to you about in this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully, if you're first time viewer, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on my next episode. Until then, thanks again for listening and have a great day. Bye bye.